Hey, excuse me, I was interested in buying this dress. How much are you selling it for?
That one will be $400. It's super rare.
Did you say $400?
Yeah,
It's unlined and it's see-through.
it's also got stains.
You said it has stains? Okay. How much is this dress?
That one's on bid.
It's on bid. What's the asking price?
$600.
$600? Okay, I'm back. I saved up some money. I have $400 on me, okay? So I would prefer to spend that on at least 2 dresses, but I know the market's really bad. Just be honest. How much is this dress gonna cost?
So that one's actually gonna be $1,000.
Did you just say $1,000? But the fabric is bleeding and the elastic is shot.
Yeah, so it's actually really rare and it also has stains.
What do you mean it has stains? Do you like old school EGL? Are you tired of spending $1,000 on old, damaged, unlined, dry rot dresses? Well, I have spent the past 3 years sewing my own Lolita wardrobe, and I just counted and I've made over 30 pieces now. So I figured it was finally time for me to spread the knowledge of EGL sewing to the internet. As always, my videos are not tutorials. I'm just here to show you my methods and show you what works for me. What works for me might not work for you. Got it? Good. Today we are making 2 different styles of dresses, the Shirring JSK and the Princess Seamed OP. You'd be surprised how many EGL dresses use just these 2 patterns. There will be timestamps throughout this video so you can skip around to what you need, so let's get started. So if you want an idea of what fabric you want to make dresses out of, if you go to thelibrary.com, they actually will tell you what dresses are made out of for almost every dress that's on the website. But from my experience, I found that most old school pieces are made out of one of the 4 fabrics: broadcloth, twill, corduroy, and velveteen. Now, whether or not these pieces are made out of cotton or poly cotton will depend on the dress and the brand, but I will always recommend that you use a natural material for breathability purposes. Now, there are 2 options for buying fabrics. You can either buy them in person or you can buy them online. I will always recommend to buy them in person, as I can touch and confirm the quality of the piece before I buy it. If there are no local fabric stores in your area, I have went to Michael's, and I know it's not Joann's, but they do have a decent selection of cotton fabrics, and they're actually pretty cheap. So if you want to make like a simple cotton broadcloth piece, like a lot of unlined meta pieces or curly tag meta pieces, you can buy cotton broadcloth and cotton fabrics at Michael's for pretty cheap. My other recommendation would be to actually go to like a thrift store. A lot of thrift stores have vintage fabrics, and while you might not be able to find that exact like damask fabric that Mom and Moitié used, it's still not only good for the planet, it's cheaper, but if you get like a cotton bed sheet, you can get a lot of it for cheap, which is good for mock-ups or for making the entire dress, depending on what you're making. So here are the online storefront options that I have personally bought from that I can recommend. The first one is Big Z Fabrics. This piece is made from their velveteen. I really like the velveteen. It is not as thick as I would like, but it's very plush and soft and of a good quality, and it's cotton. The downside is that they are from California, so if you live like really far from there, it's very expensive to ship. And they also have a very strange array of colors. You're not going to be able to buy black velveteen or like a navy velveteen. They have some weird colors, but if you want something like a red or a salmon pink or like a turquoise, if that's your thing, they do have those options to you. The other recommendation I have is a website called Fabric Wholesale Direct. I have bought cotton broadcloth, twill, and cotton velveteen from there. While I do like their twill and their cotton broadcloth, I'm not a huge fan of their velveteen. It has an elastane in it, so it is stretchy, which can be a good thing, but it just doesn't have that same thickness and grit that a lot of old school velveteen pieces have. So if you want your garment to stretch, then I think it's a decent option. But if you're looking for something that's similar to the quality of a lot of old school pieces, they just don't match. However, if you want a place that has really cheap cotton broadcloth, Fabric Direct is a website I would recommend. Their website is shady and they definitely need to update it, but they have really cheap by the yard options, but they also will pre-cut fabric. So you can get like 8 yards of cotton broadcloth for a pretty decent price, but it's probably going to be a polycotton blend, which might not be everyone's thing. Tomato Fabrics in Japan is my biggest recommendation for velveteen fabric. I've been able to go to Japan and feel the quality of the velveteen. They also have a more normal array of colors. So if you want black, they have purple, red, navy, some good color options. Now, I have never actually bought from their online storefront, so I can't attest to that at all. I can just attest to the quality of the store. I've also, like, if you're interested in silks or shantung fabrics for like a lot of moitié old school pieces, I also like their silks as well, and they're actually pretty decently priced in my opinion. Now, my last online recommendation would be Mercari Japan. I have actually bought velveteen fabric from just random storefronts on Mercari Japan. So they're going to have pre-cut yards, not necessarily like by the yard pieces unless you buy from a physical store that's just has a Mercari storefront. But you know, there's a risk with you not being able to test the quality, but I have found that the velveteen I bought from Mercari Japan to be pretty good. But do keep in mind, with tariffs nowadays, fabric is really expensive to ship. You'd be surprised how bulky and heavy, especially cotton velveteen, can be. My last online recommendation is eBay. You can get fabric for pretty cheap on eBay, and they come in pre-cut lots a lot of times. I like to buy like vintage yardage of fabric that people just sell from estate sales, for example. You again have the risk of not being able to test the quality. With my sewing integrity, I can kind of tell what fabric something is based on looking at it, but you do have the caveat of like not being able to test the quality or be able to return it sometimes if you buy a fabric you're not happy with. I will say, however, if you look up antique tapestry fabric on eBay, like the Goblin fabrics that a lot of brands use, it is very easy to find on eBay. A lot of people sell it in large yardage because it's mostly used for upholstery. So that would be my biggest recommendation if you're looking for like your Goblins to use for an old school piece. Check eBay. It might not be the exact same Goblin that moitié uses or whatever, for example, but I've been able to find some pretty close matches just from frequently checking there. For my dresses today, I will be using a cotton velveteen and a cotton corduroy that I purchased from a local fabric store. So with our fabrics chosen, let's go ahead and make these pieces.
If you're curious, the Shirring OP is the easier one to make of the two. To start, this is the sleeve pattern that I have. If you're curious, this is the sleeve pattern from Dress Burgania from Dress Developer, but you could use either one. This is the specific Etsy pattern that I used. It took me years to find the specific pattern, but the best one out there is the Prairie Doll blouse style. You can find different kinds, but this is the specific one I used. The pattern is for a blouse, so it's meant to hit at hip length. You'll have to shorten it for most EGL styles that hit at waist length. For this pattern, I'm cutting 4 pieces for the yoke. One for the front, one for the back and their linings. And then the bodice pieces are these rectangle pieces. I use the back pattern for both. It's just personal preference, but the arm's eye has more depth at the front to account for the bust. Most EGL shirring pieces are unlined. With the nature of the garment, it's easier to do it this way, in my opinion. Because of that, I am serging all of the exposed edges of my fabric pieces. Now for shirring. I've tried several methods and I like knit elastic the best. I am showing you what it looks like compared to braided elastic, as knit elastic is a lot harder to find. Braided elastic has these lines on it and it is much weaker and it warps when stretched. You also cannot sew through this elastic. Knit elastic is much stronger and it doesn't warp and has holes so you can sew through it very easily. Just don't buy braided elastic. I'm going to prep my pieces that need shearing with a quilting ruler that can really speed up the process. I prefer to use my water-soluble pen, but it dried on me. I used the tension dial on my machine to create some gathers using the straight stitch, and then I'm going to gather the bodice pieces and then attach them to the yoke. After the pieces are sewn, I'm going to go through and cut the neckline of the yoke before I sew it. It's always easier to do it this way. Afterwards, I'm going to gather the fabric using the tension on my machine. For the corduroy, I had to dial this up to almost 8 or 9 to get a decent result, but it's lightweight enough that it worked. After gathering the bodice pieces to the yoke, I'm going to prep the sleeves beforehand. For the knit elastic, I'm following the lines that I created with the tailor's chalk, and I'm going to pull the knit elastic taut as I sew it. This is the easiest way to do it, but I've also tried using elastic channels with bias tape. I just find this way is a little bit faster. Afterwards, we're going to sew the yoke we're going to sew the facing of the yoke to the pre-made yoke that we've already sewn in. This is going to get sewn right sides together, and this is usually easier to do before you sew the side seams of the bodice closed. Afterwards, I'm going to hand sew the facing down. I prefer to do this by hand. You can do this by machine, but if you're skilled enough, you can get these stitches to be pretty much hidden from the front, so I find that it's a nice way to stop and slow down with the project. Also, hand sewing is just really calming, so I highly give it a try. I'm wearing my thimble on my forefinger because it doesn't fit on my middle finger. I bought a new thimble though, so yeah. Here is how the bodice is coming out. Because the fabric is super busy, I actually don't like it as an OP. I tried playing around with different laces to see if I could try to break up a lot of the design, but honestly I wasn't vibing with any of these options. So the good news is that since I ended up making this and not liking it, it means you get to also see how to make a Shirring JSK. But it's easier to attach this to the skirt first, so let's make that beforehand. Gathered skirts with tiers are super easy to do. It's literally just rectangles. For this one, I decided to do a more casual gather, so it's only 1.5 versus the initial 2 that you can do for gathered pieces. For the double fold hem, I learned this technique from Professor Pincushion, but if you sew a basting stitch beforehand, it gets you really even double fold hems because you can use the basting stitch as a guide. So here I'm literally just eyeballing the basting stitch as I sew, and it's a lot faster, I find. Next, after I gather the bottom tier with the tension of my machine, it's going to get sewn right sides together with the top tier. It is completely optional, but for this piece I decided to top stitch down the tiers. This just helps everything to lie flat and it gives a nice look. But if you want a more voluminous skirt or just don't care too much to do this, you could probably skip this step, and depending on the project, sometimes I will, sometimes I won't. Next, I'm going to make some lace. Now, in America, I find it really hard to find that nice thick torsion border lace that is available in Japan. So what I do is I just combine 2 pieces of crocheted lace together to get the same look. So basically all I'm doing here is sandwiching the pieces together using the zigzag stitch on my machine. This is a really nice hack as it's really cheap to get a lot of torsion lace in like the bulk packs, but do keep in mind that this eats up a lot of yardage. So for this particular piece, I had to buy like 45 yards of lace in order to get this effect. And here is how everything looks together. Honestly, if you use a matching thread color, it's almost invisible unless you're like really up against the dress. So, nice hack in my opinion. Next, I'm going to top stitch this to the dress. I know since I've owned so many and washed so many pieces, I like to tack them from a 1/4 inch from the top and the bottom of the lace. This makes washing it easier, as the lace will tend to flip down when you go to wash it, and it's just a hassle. My skirt came out at around 18 inches, which for me was a little too short, so I also added some to the hem of the piece just to help lengthen it. And in this case, it also adds a really nice border. But for this, you don't have to double fold hem it. You can just single fold hem it with the lace if you end up doing it this way. Then I had some extra of the ladder lace, so I'm sewing this on as well. I fed a velvet ribbon in between all of the ladder lace to give it a nice effect. I think it matches since the corduroy has that velvety kind of texture anyway. But this gets top stitched on both the top and the bottom. After all the lace is sewn, I'm going to gather the skirt piece and then attach it to the bodice. It's usually easier to do this, as once the shirring is attached, you kind of have to pull it taut as you sew, so I always find it easier to do this. But after this, I also added the same lace trim to the top of the piece, and then we have to attach the sleeves. The straps of Shirring JSKs, I just cut anywhere from 2 to 3 inches of fabric, sew it right sides together, and then top stitch the excess down. Obviously, my camera is way more interested in my machine than the actual sewing that I'm doing, but yeah, all I'm doing is just top stitching down the straps, and once you sew the elastic to the bodice, that's pretty much it. I ended up running out, so I only was able to shear the top and the waist, but we're pretty much done with the Shirring JSK, so let's move on to the OP. So the princess seam we're making today is one inspired by the one from Metamorphose Tom Steffi in 2004. I can never remember the name of it. So for this one, we're going to need to draft some different patterns. I'm doing this because it's just nice to have, as I sew a lot of cosplays, and these are technically for some cosplays I'm making in the future, but we're going to start off with a bodice block. And this is specifically one that is going to be altered to have a princess seam into the arm's eye. This is very specific, as a lot of Lolita patterns have the princess seam into the arm's eye. And then the other pattern I'm going to make is a sleeve block. And then with this sleeve block, I'm going to make what is called a Juliet sleeve. It is basically 2 pieces. One is slashed to create the puff sleeve, and then the fitted part is called the glove. And it has a little bit of ease in it, but it is supposed to be like a fitted piece. And that is a very common pattern in Lolita as well. So those are the patterns I'm going to use for this piece.
Let's talk about pattern making, for example. Let's talk about pattern making for a sec. I personally pattern all of the dresses that I make now. I just don't really fit EGL dresses that are pre-made. So I oftentimes don't really feel like I will fit the patterns that are made for EGL either. You can go online and buy books secondhand. You can check libraries. There's a lot of ways to get accessibility to certain pattern making books. But I will give a huge caveat here that while you have the benefit of making your own patterns and being able to customize any piece, I've been sewing for 5 years and it took me about 30 hours to pattern every single thing I made for the dresses that I just showed you. So it is extremely time consuming, and it's a lot of math and a lot of following very specific instructions, and a lot of it is sewing integrity too. So it might not be the best option for everyone out there. If you do not want to make your own patterns, here are some places that I've heard of that you can try out. Now, I've never used them, but you can try them out is the point. Gosurori is a pattern magazine that you can purchase. Unfortunately, they are really expensive to buy nowadays, but there are magazine scans online that you can go to and either print them out or just use on your phone as a reference. Now, the caveat here is that these books are in Japanese, so you will either need to find an English translation of it or translate it yourself for all of the instructions and the pattern making. The other thing is that they're not printed out, so you will have to use the scales that they give you and make your own patterns based on the instructions that follow, which is also a pretty advanced sewing technique in and of itself, so it's a little complicated. Another option is Gothic Lolita Bibles. Now, you can get lucky, and a lot of Gothic Lolita Bibles have patterns in the back, and these are pre-printed, so all you have to do is trace them. I wouldn't cut them out because they print them front and back and overlap them, but for any of the Gothic Lolita Bibles, a lot of them have patterns in them. It's kind of hard to figure out which magazines have which patterns, but pretty much all Gothic Lolita Bibles have scans of 2, so you can kind of figure out which one you want to buy, so you can see like which one you want to purchase and use the patterns for. Now, unfortunately, Gothic Lolita Bibles are very expensive nowadays, and not all of them have the patterns in them. And again, these are the English translation ones, which are more expensive. So if you buy the cheaper ones, like the Japanese ones off of Mercari Japan, you again are probably gonna have to translate a lot of the instructions for the patterns. Now, Otome no Sewing is another book by Misako, I think? She's on the cover, so maybe. But these are also sewing books as well. I've never purchased one, I've never looked at them. I don't know what instructions or anything are in those books, but those are also sewing books that overlap with a lot of EGL patterns, but there's also more like cottagecore-esque pieces and patterns in there as well, since it's a modern like release option. Another option you can do is Dr. Cos. It is a Japanese patterning company. Most of their patterns are free. Some of their patterns you have to pay for, but they do have English like instructions and English measurements for a lot of their patterns. I've never had any luck with their EGL patterns, unfortunately, because they are Asian sizing. Even when I have matched my measurements to those specific patterns, I've never had a Dr. Cos pattern fit. So if you do plan to use them, I would size up at least one size, but they do have EGL patterns on there, and a lot of them are actually free, and they have pretty easy to follow instructions for a lot of the patterns on their website too. So that's a decent option as well. The last patterning option you would have at your disposal is commercial patterns. I personally don't think commercial patterns are very beginner friendly. You would probably be best to watch like a video on the specific pattern you plan on using if you want to use a specific pattern, but Simplicity has a lot of EGL patterns that you can use. I personally really like the Yaya Han Lolita coat pattern I recently used. Another website I would highly recommend is Dress Developer. Their dress Berginia is a very similar silhouette to Momin Moitié pieces. I have made about 4 or 5 dresses with this pattern, and I highly recommend it as it has partial shirring. It's also a free pattern customizable to your measurements, and she has an hour-long video explaining how she makes the dresses for pretty much every pattern on her website. So that's also a great free option you can use for that specific pattern. And last but not least, Etsy. Be wary, a lot of Etsy pattern makers are AI generated, so you will have to have a little bit of discernment before you purchase patterns on there. But if you know what to look for, a lot of patterns are very Lolita-able, so they're not Lolita patterns, but if you adjust them slightly, they can be used for Lolita purposes. The big disclaimer here though is that I am not a pattern maker. I am just a rando on the internet that likes to sew. I cannot advise you on what patterns you might want to use. I cannot advise you on pattern making. I will not sell any of the patterns that I make for any of my Lolita garments, as they are fit to me and they are amateur at best. So those are the other options that I can give you as far as patterns are concerned. But the point is that most of the dresses that I make use basically my own patterns. So with that out of the way, let's get back to making these pieces.
Okay, so now that you have some more options for patterns, let me show you how these patterns look on fabric. So this is the glove and the puff sleeve that I stated earlier, which is going to make the Juliet sleeve. It's going to get gathered down later. This is going to be all of the bodice pieces. There are 4 in total: a center front, the side seams, and then the center back seams. And then we're also going to have what is called a Peter Pan collar. This is pretty common in Lolita fashion too. These can be cut several different ways, but since mine is opening in the back, it's going to cut this way. I specifically bought this velveteen that is stretchy on the cross grain, and it's not stretchy on the grain. And this is going to make it a lot easier for that Juliet sleeve to stretch around my arm. So if you have a common problem like that with Juliet sleeves, give this a try. For all of my velveteen pieces, I like to serge them. Cotton velveteen particularly is really hard to fray check without a serger, so I like to go through every single piece that is going to be exposed. Since this fabric is so heavyweight, I didn't bother to line it, but honestly, I kind of wish I lined it. I kind of wish I lined it anyway. The first thing I'm going to do is sew all of the bodice pieces together. I'm only going to sew the side pieces to the center front and the back, and I'm not going to sew the side seams closed yet. You'll understand why later. I've gotten asked a lot how I'm able to work with velveteen, but honestly, velvet is the one you should be more wary of as it has a longer fur pile than velvet. I just use a lot of pins, and you can also use a walking foot to make it easier. This is the Juliet sleeve we talked about earlier. It's been gathered at the puff, and then this is going to get sewn right sides together at the glove. Once again, using multiple basting stitches can make sewing a gathered sleeve easier, but I'm just very lazy when it comes to gathers, so I kind of just struggle with this as I go. Next, I'm going to sew the puff sleeves into the arm sleeve. This is much easier to do if you have not sewn the side seam closed yet, as it just gives you a little bit more control. You can obviously sew it once the arm's eye is closed. I just find this process a little bit easier, especially when I have a puff sleeve like this one. And then afterwards, it's as easy as sewing the entire side seam closed. So this way, the arm sleeve and the bodice sleeve pieces get closed all in the same stitch. I think it's a lot easier. Next, I'm going to work on the collar. So this collar actually has two pieces in it. So to start, I have the base collar piece, and I'm sewing this ladder lace with a velvet ribbon sewn in between, and I'm going to base this onto the collar first. Next, I'm going to prep some gathering fabric. It's basically more of the velveteen, but I added a hem to it, and this is going to get sewn to the collar. Then I'm going to sew the collar directly to the bodice, and what I've added here is like a facing. Since this piece isn't lined, I'm going to use a hand stitch to sew this together so that the stitch is very invisible. I believe it's called a prick stitch. Hand sewing is just going to give me a little bit more control than the machine, and like I was saying earlier with the other piece, you can have these pieces be almost invisible if you sew them by hand, so I like to do it by hand when I can. And here is how the bodice is looking. The collar is going to look a little bit differently as I did go back and change it, but this is how it was looking with just the bodice pieces. And what we're going to do is, what's really going to make this piece pop is adding the ladder lace to it afterwards. But I think it's going to be easier to line up everything after I make the skirt. I got some different pieces of ladder lace, and I was kind of just deciding where I wanted to place everything before I started working on the skirt. But with the placement figured out, I feel comfortable to work on the skirt. So let's work on the skirt next. The skirt's going to get a little complicated, so bear with me here. Basically, it's the same rectangle pattern, but I have 3 additional tiers for my skirt. This is because I want to make it fully tiered instead of the faux tiers that Meta has, because I just think it's more confusing. Bear with me. For the tiers, the ruffle tiers, I have serged all of the pieces, and I'm going to add on the torsion lace that's going to be on the hem. This is going to get sewn right sides together. And then I'm going to flip everything and then top stitch it down. I find that this is a little bit easier than serging the lace, but if you find serging the lace faster, then do it that way. This process is very long and arduous, but I highly recommend that you sew the lace before you gather the lace trim. It is so much harder to hem a piece after it's gathered. So definitely do this first if you want it to be easier. Afterwards, I have gathered all of the tiers and pinned them where I want it on the skirt. So now we have to do the hard part, which is sewing all of the tiers onto the skirt. I find it easier to start from the bottom and work my way up. And basically, it's just the process of sewing everything down. It's going to get very bulky, it's going to fight your machine, and you are going to feel like you are drowning in ruffles. But at least you know that if you're drowning in ruffles, it means your skirt's going to be massive. And as Lolita say, the larger the skirt, the more Lolita it is. After the tiers are sewn, now we can actually finish the skirt. The front of the skirt does not have tiers, so that's what that front panel is. And I have already gone in and sewn in pockets because I refuse to wear Lolita dresses without pockets now. So basically we're going to be sewing all of the seams closed. Here I'm going to be sewing in the insert pockets. I'm using the Dress Developer pattern, and these are really simple. You basically would just sew the seam as you would if there wasn't a pocket, but you're going to sew around the pocket bag and not closed. That way you can actually access the pocket later. It also helps to press this to make it super flat. Then I'm going to gather the skirt to the bodice the same way I did with the other dress, and here I am just sewing a zipper closed. This process is pretty finicky, especially since the dress is pretty much done at this point. You could probably hand baste this and hand sew it if you wanted to. Now, I initially thought that trying to sew the lace onto the bodice with my machine was going to be a good idea, but at this point the dress is done and it was very hard to get it to fit into my machine, especially for the bodice pieces, and I just wasn't confident that the lace was going to be lying flat, so I decided to take this off my machine and hand sew it. And while I did that, I went on ahead and sewed some ribbon pieces that have fray check on them, and these are going to act as the corset lacing for the ribbon that is on the front of the piece. And then I'll just feed the ribbon through afterwards. And then I am also going to hand stitch all of the ladder lace as well. This did take a while, about a couple hours, but it ensured that everything was going to lie nicely, so I think it was worth the effort. And with that, the dresses are done, so let's see the finished result. Here is how the Shirring JSK turned out with the corduroy and the cream lace. It turned out a little bit bigger, but I'm honestly not mad at it because it means that it's a little bit more roomy and comfortable. I'm also really happy that I opted for adding the longer lace, as this is the perfect length now. And here is how the OP turned out. Also a little big, but I'm not mad at it. I can always add waist ties later. And the skirt turned out massive, you guys. This is like the biggest skirt in the yard. But again, I'm not mad at it. She's very cute. And I think the ladder lace in the cream color is super striking and definitely different from my usual style. And here is what you can do with the patterns that I've just given you. So for shirring pieces, this is like a cornet garou style piece that I made. It's just the tiered skirt, fully shirred piece with the Peter Pan collar that the Etsy pattern came with. And I made all of these handmade roses that are sewn onto the piece. This is the same pattern, but as a JSK style, but fully sheared. And this one has 2 tiers instead of the 3 that were on the previous one. And it's slightly longer as well. I think it looks super dreamy, and I added the rose piece as well. This is one that inspired by Innocent World's Rococo OP. It's still the same yoke pattern, but this one has the 3 tiers. Very massive skirt, and it also has pockets. And you can also try top stitching lace onto the tiers as well for a cool look. And here's what you can do with the fitted princess seamed piece. This one is inspired by the 2001 Fur Flare JSK from Victorian Maiden. It's the same style, but it's sleeveless and it has inverted box pleats for the hem that you can't see because my camera hates the black color, but everything is hemmed with fur. And here is another pattern that I use, the princess seams. This is the silk dupioni dress that I made. Unfortunately, I didn't know you should not wash silk, so I had a lot of wrinkling and staining, but it's still very reminiscent of moitié pieces, and you can make a lot of cool, very simple but striking styles by using this pattern. I also just love the blue moitié color. And here is another princess seamed piece, but it's another OP with the same Juliet pattern, but the bottom has a frilly hem, very similar to Baby the Stars Shine Bright Little Princess OP. For the skirt, it's gathered and it has space tucks as well as the lace using the same method I showed you in this video. And it's a square neckline piece, but it has a detachable collar, so it's super versatile. And here's the last piece I'll show you. It's made out of a vintage corduroy. It's the exact same princess seam pattern, but I lowered the neckline to add some corset lacing in it, and then I also made it tiered as well. And the pièce de resistance for all of my dresses is that I add pockets and shirring into every single piece, and I try to use vintage fabrics when I can, just like for this piece. It's just really fun getting to kind of mix and match and make your own pieces. So this catalog here is to kind of just show you that there's a lot of different ideas at your disposal as soon as you know the pattern.
Now I do realize that essentially I have made a replica dress and then I'm teaching people how to make their own. And I know a lot of people aren't going to like that. But as someone who sits right in between the joy of collecting and preserving special pieces, but also someone who makes their own pieces and demands accessibility from brands, I feel like I'm in the perfect spot to have a discussion about this. So let's talk about it. Even in the big 2026, EGL has an accessibility problem. Back when these old school dresses were first made, Lolita fashion had a very small and very specific clientele. Back in the streets of Harajuku, when women were just trying to gain agency in their own bodies by wearing specific clothing. Lolita fashion. But Lolita fashion 20 years later is a lot bigger now. Even though brands still make pieces today, pieces are usually made to order, so you have to buy these pieces in batches, still have a maximum size measurement that excludes people. And I know, as someone who sews, I know how difficult it is to pattern grade pieces to fit larger bodies. I also know that it takes a lot of extra fabric to make dresses in larger sizes. But doing something as simple as adding shirring to a piece is not hard, and it's a great way to add accessibility to pieces. So why don't brands do it? But you know what is hard? Trying to buy pieces that don't exist anymore. EGL has to cater to their audience. They don't have the infrastructure to just make whatever they want. So pieces are only ever going to be re-released if they are confident people will buy them. And unfortunately, a lot of old school prints aren't popular, so brands aren't going to remake them. So then, people are stuck with having to buy old school dresses that were already made. And I'm not kidding when I say these dresses that were made are small. I'm looking at you, woman moitié, Victorian Maiden. Not to mention, there is a huge barrier to entry to even buying old school nowadays. Take 1999 bouquet print OP from Metamorphose Tom Stiffy. Literally less than 100 were ever made. Who's gonna sell theirs? And if they do, imagine all of the people who would want that dress. Essentially, you're gonna have all of these people fighting what might literally be the only one ever sold. People are gonna pay a pretty penny for that. Scalpers catch on to this, so then dresses are sold for scalp prices. People who are new to the fashion buy it for $700 because they think that's a normal price. Then all the prices go up. Veterans of the fashion who know that these are scalp prices also don't want to be taken advantage of, So they'll either A, sell it for the price that everyone else is, or B, will sell it to someone that they know and trust for the actual price that they paid for it. So unless you know someone who has 1999 Meta Bouquet print, or are willing to spend essentially $1,000 on the dress, you're probably not going to get the dress. Ever. I've been into fashion for 4 years now, and I felt disconnected to Lolita fashion for a very long time because I am tired of trying to get my body to fit into these dresses when dresses are supposed to be made to fit me. The problem with that is that people in Lolita fashion are so tied to wanting to keep the integrity of the fashion alive that they end up gatekeeping and being exclusionary of people. And those fundamentals is what makes fashions die out. I've literally had people tell me I am ruining dresses by paying someone to professionally alter them. We can have topics all day about preserving the integrity of these dresses and preserving the designs, but telling someone what they can and cannot sew with their own money is exclusionary, and it needs to stop. The next time you see someone sew a replica of a 30-year-old dress that goes for $1,000 online, or you see someone alter a dress to better fit them, or you even see someone modify a dress to add a pocket in it, let them be, and think about the privileges that you yourself might have in Lolita fashion. Do you know how much harder it is to alter a piece to be a larger size? If a piece is too big for you, it is extremely easy to take in the sides with little to no experience in sewing. It is also easy to just add waist ties or corset lacing to the back of pieces if you don't know how to sew. Most dresses come with waist ties and corset lacing anyway, and you don't even need a sewing machine to do these alterations. If a piece is too small for you, some people have to buy 2 of the exact same dress and pay someone to essentially Frankenstein them together as one piece. Or the person who owns the dress. It takes a lot of money to do this. It takes a lot of time to find these fabrics that aren't made anymore and match them to the dress. And it takes a lot of time and vetting to even find someone that you trust that has the expertise to do these alterations and isn't going to charge you an arm and a leg to do. For the person altering the dress, they have to know a lot about patterning and pattern grading. You can't just make pieces bigger if they're for a bigger size. You have to grade them to properly fit the body, like the original dress would have if it was made for that body. It takes a lot of time, precision, and skill, which then costs the person who owns the dress money. Granted, I myself have privilege in Lolita fashion. I am lucky that I still fit into the very small amount of old school pieces I have left. And of the pieces I will never fit, I have the infrastructure, the skill, and the time to make them. My point with bringing up this problem of size accessibility is just to talk about something that I feel so strongly about, and I want to talk alongside plus size Lolitas, not over them. So believe me when I say, as someone who owns old school pieces and wants to keep the integrity of the fashion and the designers alive, but also knows how difficult it is to get these pieces and knows that these pieces just aren't meant to fit everyone and just in and of itself are exclusionary, I fully stand on the argument that fashion accessibility is the most important part of fashion integrity. When you know how to turn fabric into your own piece, you have full say in what your pieces do. If you want a dress to be longer or shorter, if you want to add certain embroidery or designs to your piece, if you want to add pockets, because most Lolita brands don't, or if you're just tired of having habutai polyester lining in your pieces, you can make your pieces exactly how you want for your body, and that is powerful. I'll be honest, As someone who's had to sell over half, probably more than half my wardrobe because I no longer fit into these beloved dresses, nothing will dull the pain of having to part with a piece that you've loved and enjoyed for years. But being able to make something like it that is made to my body is a powerful thing. But sewing has really helped me to fall back in love with Lolita fashion. And if you yourself or you know someone who's had the same issues with Lolita and maybe wants to give sewing a try, I genuinely, from the bottom of my heart, hope you, one, see this video, and two, that it helps you in any way, shape, or form. These videos take a lot of work to make, and I've struggled with what I've wanted to say for this video for a few weeks now, but the whole point of making this video is, one, I love sewing and I love talking about sewing, but two, I genuinely hope that this video helps people to make Lolita fashion more accessible to them, because that's how fashion stays alive. You've gotten to the end of this video. Congratulations to you. If you are interested in my other sewing videos, my expertise is in making silly costumes. So if you're interested in watching anything like that, feel free to stick around. I have a small little corner of the internet here, but I'm very proud of her. And for however long you stay, I hope you enjoy your stay here. If you're curious what I've been working on at present, I gave a little teaser in my last video, but essentially I am working on a certain someone from Kingdom Hearts. It is an extremely labor-intensive costume, as I have to make pants and a jacket, which means I have to tailor something. But he will get done, and I am very excited to show you guys the finished result. But I will stop rambling, and as always, I hope you, yes you, have a wonderful day.